Lettermullan, in the heart of the Connemara Gaeltacht, and the annual battle of wits between the Gardaí and the poitín makers gets underway. There was a time when poitín making was an almost exclusively pre-Christmas operation, for those who were willing to take the risks, that is. But in the past few years it has become a huge all-year-round money-making business, which has seen many outsiders move in to make a fast buck.
We had 49 seizures during the year 1976.
What kind of material would you have seized? What did you take in?
We took in 159 barrels of beer. That would be sufficient now for, on one run, to make 2,550 gallons of poitín. And by using the bottled beer the second time, it would be sufficient to make 5,100 roughly.
And how much would that be worth, 5,000 gallons of poitín?
Well, it would be worth approximately £63,000.
£63,000 is a lot of money. Not for the first time, people are talking again of making poitín a legal industry. During the past year, for instance, one resourceful cooperative in the Gaeltacht, Comharchumann Cois Fharraige, has carried out a good deal of research into the idea and claims that the legalisation of small local poitín distilleries could create a £20 million business.
That would be something like that we're speaking about, but we are speaking, I emphasise the term controlled legalisation, because there would have to be several conditions laid down. The conditions that we would see, first of all, that a poitín maker would have to acquire a licence. To get a licence to manufacture, he would have to meet certain laid down criteria, which would govern hygiene, makeup of the actual poitín, and on top of that, when he would actually come about to manufacture, there would have to be quality control, which would be done, we would see it by, say, the Department of Industry and Commerce. That is, we're speaking about a very tightly controlled operation, not a free-for-all.
But would that differ very much from, say, an ordinary distillery deciding to open up a few small distilleries in this part of the country?
I think it would. First of all, the legal situation would be quite different. And second of all, what we're speaking about poitín, which is normally manufactured in what can be commonly described as depressed areas. We're speaking about the establishment of several cottage industries. The offspin of this type of an operation is quite gigantic in terms of an area like Connemara, where I would say straight off we would be speaking about employment in the region of 80 to 120 people.
It doesn't take very much in the way of capital or equipment to set up an illegal trade, and there are big profits if you can keep one jump ahead of the law.
Could you give us an idea how much it costs to make, say, a barrel of poitín and how much profit you can make from that?
Well, for one barrel you'd want 100 weight of grain, which would be approximately £8, and about 100 weight of sugar, which is roughly £14. That's £22. And you want yeast and a few things, but it's only a small amount. And you'd have approximately 16 gallons of that. And then by using it the second time with another 100 weight of sugar, with what's known as the bottled beer, you would have 32 gallons of one barrel. And that would bring in approximately £380 or 390, with approximately £350 of profit on one barrel of beer. So it's very profitable.
The Connemara poitín still is really no different from that used by moonshiners the world over. All you need is 2 40-gallon barrels, 3 stone of barley, 2 stone of sugar, a little yeast, and in about 3 hours, when the brew has slowly filtered through the copper worm, the heart of the still, you have 6 gallons of poitín. No, he assured the sergeant, there was no whiskey at all. No whiskey at all being made in the area now. Whiskey is, of course, what the locals call poitín, and the shop-bought bottle, just in case you may be getting a bit confused, is generally referred to as a bottle of Parliament. But there are others, particularly when the Gardaí aren't around, who are willing to admit that they made whiskey once upon a time.
I did, sir. I did, to be sure. But my father and my brother, we used to be making it, and if my father wouldn't be able to do it, myself and the brother who were able to make it until I left the place, and the brother was making it a long time afterwards, but to stop our place back the mountains, because he had to stop it, because the girl was too hard after them, and they had to beat them 2 or 3 times, but they didn't catch themselves any time, because they didn't watch out.
Well, how did you escape from the guards?
Well, I used to be out in olden times on the road, same as there now, there weren't much cars. I could come on my bicycle, I had a light on my bicycle, the front light and the back light, and I could come from Michael through Galway, and I did, maybe 3 times a week, and I often met the guard with my 2 lights, and they never pulled me. And often I made over clear Galway, if you know where it is, with 2 gallons of poitín on my back, where I had a friend there who was keeping that my always. It might be 2 o'clock when I land over there, and I was within 2 miles of his house one night, and I met the 2 guards coming walking. Well, I had my 2 lights, I said good night, and they said good night, and your man was over, and he seen the 2 guards going back, and he was shivering out like that beyond the house till he seen me coming up on bicycle.
And you had poitín at the time?
I had 2 gallons of poitín in my bag. So the first thing he asked me, Paddy, he said, did you meet the guards? I did. He said, why are you afraid? Why would I be afraid? He said, I had 2 lights. I said, I want to come to pull me. He said, when I had 2 lights, oh, I thought I'd drop you. He said, till I seen you coming off the bicycle there. I thought you were caught back the road.
Gather up the pots and the old tin can, the mash, the corn, the barley and the bran. Run like the devil from the excise man, keep the smoke from rising, Barney. Keep your eyes well peeled today, the excise men are on the way, searching for the mountain tay in the hills of Connemara. Gather up the pots and the old tin can, the mash, the corn, the barley and the bran. Run like the devil from the excise man, keep the smoke from rising, Barney. Mountain breezes as they blow, hear their echo in the glens below. The Gumbean men are on the go in the hills of Connemara. Gather up the pots and the old tin can, the mash, the corn, the barley and the bran. Run like the devil from the excise man, keep the smoke from rising, Barney.
So much for the romance, but there is a more serious side to all of it. Poitín is not merely illegal, it is, as many a man has learned to his cost, dangerous. Drinking poitín, even over a short period, can lead a man to his death on the roadside or in a lake.
If he is drinking poitín for a longer time, for some days or even some weeks, he may develop delirium tremens. This is a DTs. It is a condition in which the patient is very restless, he can't sleep, he moves around continuously, he shakes, and he has hallucinations. That is, that he sees small animals in the room, rats and mice. He knows that they're not actually there, but he finds this very distressing.
Have you actually seen this happen to people in your own experience?
Oh yes, I have seen it several times. These people usually have to go to hospital, frequently a mental hospital. They recover after a comparatively short time. There is also the fact that people who have an illness such as flu frequently take poitín as a cure. This does a good deal of harm in many cases. The people try to carry on with their work taking a certain amount of poitín, and this leads in several cases to cardiac damage, which is likely to be permanent.
But there are people who swear by poitín as a cure for illnesses in the same way as people tend to take punch when they're ill. Do you say that this is wrong, that it's not the right thing to do?
Yes, emphatically yes. I don't think poitín has any place in the treatment of any condition.
It is dangerous. Dangerous very long since I took 2 glasses of what could be almost a year ago, down in Hertford. And I thought I had a quart drink when I had the 2 glasses drank. And only for I was sitting in the car, I'd fallen the road. It went up to my head. God's one poitín at all. There was the smell of the poitín, and that was some other thing through it.
And then there's the question of morality. Is it wrong to make or to drink poitín? Father Leo Morahan is the parish priest of Rossmuck, traditionally a big poitín making area.
Well, it's the same, of course, as it is on any drink or indeed on any matter. The kind of good thing that God has given us, the abuse of it is a sin. But there was a much firmer kind of official church attitude towards it in times gone by. I think it's true to say it was a reserved sin, especially associated with wakes and funerals and that. And even today, of course, maybe it's old-fashioned to talk about the occasion of sin now, but whatever new terminology we use for the occasion of sin, if poitín drinking or making leads to that, the church also condemns that.
Is poitín making still a sin? Is it something that people have to tell in confession, for instance?
Well, I think that's very much a matter for themselves. You know, whether a thing is a sin or not must be left to the individual himself, subjectively being a sin. But my own opinion is that when poitín is made just, you know, for their own use, for a person's proper use rather than abuse, that I don't think it's sinful. Another matter comes up on which I don't find myself, you know, entitled to make a comment is whether or not breaking the civil law is a sin. Theologians have long been divided on whether it is morally wrong always to do what's legally wrong in civil law. I would favour the opinion that it's not always wrong to do what a civil law, but maybe I'm a little bit too liberal in that. In olden times, poitín was made out of necessity. It was an economic necessity for the people to provide some kind of earning for themselves, especially coming to Christmas time when they had to pay maybe quite a lot of debts, and they did in fact make poitín and sell it to pay their debts. Nowadays it seems they're making it to make money to use for anything besides paying their debts, and I think that's objectionable. And a further objection I'd have to it is that in the making of the stuff now, they don't in fact go and make the good poitín, the doubling as they call it. They oftentimes sell off the sink.
Well, I have been told by certain publicans that their sales of whisky are down this year, because a bottle of whisky costs something like $5.75. A bottle of poitín is retailed for £2.
Brother, did you make any money out of poitín when you were at it yourself?
Well, not for myself. For the old people I was working. I was dispatcher on the road and bringing back the money maybe in a month's time when I have 9 or 10 quid made in this country and bringing back the money back home and giving it to the old people. I might get a pound myself.
We generally know who is making it, but of course there's new men starting up all the time, these ones who want to make money quickly. Some of these young men nowadays, they're making it and making bad stuff.
They're too fast now, no time now. Because I could make it now in 2 hours and get ready with it and you come and give them top money for bad poitín that you couldn't think that'd kill you. That's what they're like now.
Good poitín is in fact an art, and it would be a shame if that art were to disappear. I think we all have a duty and an obligation to see that the right skill of poitín making survives in a proper controlled manner.